They say life changes in the quietest moments. It's been 6 months, but I still remember that afternoon like it just happened. The sound of the ceiling fan humming, the way the sunlight stretched across the floor, it felt like the house was holding its breath. And so was I. I thought I was alone. I wasn't. He saw me. Not just in passing. Not a glance. He saw me completely. And I haven't been the same since. I didn't hear him come in. Just the creak of the door. Just the silence that followed. And his eyes locked on mine, wide, confused, something else, too. I don't know what. I still don't. He didn't say anything. And I couldn't move. That moment, it lives in me now. Every breath, every night, every time I close my eyes. I've asked myself 100 times, did I forget to close the door? Or did some part of me want to be seen? That question, it scares me. Because once you see yourself through someone else's eyes like that, there's no going back. What happened after that? I'll never forget it. I'll tell you everything. But before I do, subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because what happens behind closed doors changes everything. David and I used to be in love. Or, at least I thought we were. When we first got married, there was warmth. There was effort. There were nights when he'd look at me like I was the only woman on earth. But somewhere along the way, the spark turned into smoke. Barely there, always fading. These days, it feels like we're just two people living side by side. Sharing space. Not lives. He works late. He travels often. Even when he's home, he's not really here. He nods when I talk. He says all the right words, but they're hollow, like reading from a script he's long forgotten how to mean. And then there's Eli, David's son, my stepson. He was 13 when I met him. I remember how quiet he was, how he held his backpack to his chest like it was his armor. His mother had just passed. Cancer. Quick and cruel. And even back then, he had this heaviness in his eyes, like he'd seen too much for someone his age. Now he's 18. Taller than his father. Voice deeper. Still quiet, still guarded. But there's something different about him lately, something I can't quite put my finger on. He's respectful. Always has been. But sometimes when we talk, his eyes linger. Not in a way that's easy to name. It's not overt, not obvious. It's soft. Almost sad. But also curious. And then there was that one morning. I had just finished getting ready. Nothing special, just jeans and a loose blouse. I was pouring coffee when he walked into the kitchen. He stopped for a second. Looked at me a little too long. Smiled. And I caught a whiff of something familiar as he passed by. My perfume. Not on him, but around him. Like he'd been near my things. Close enough to carry the scent. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he leaned against the hallway where I keep the diffuser. Maybe I was imagining it. I had to be imagining it. But once you notice something, you start seeing the pattern. The way he started offering to help me more around the house, in the garden. The way he'd glance up from his phone whenever I walked into the room. The way he laughed at my jokes, even the ones that weren't funny. It wasn't flirtatious. Not exactly. It was softer than that. More confusing. And I didn't push him away. Maybe I should have. But when someone looks at you like you matter, really matter, after months, years of feeling invisible, it does something to you. It wakes up a part of you that's been asleep for so long, you forgot it was even there. Our house is quiet. Too quiet. Dinner is usually 3 plates on the table and only 2 of us sitting there. David's always in the office or on a call or just finishing up one last thing. Eli and I share most meals alone now. We talk about little things, school, movies, what's on the news, but underneath it all, there's this tension. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just steady. Constant. Like a low hum in the background of everything. Sometimes we run out of things to say, and we just sit in the silence. But even then, I can feel it. His eyes on me. Not always directly. Sometimes it's just a glance. But I feel it. And the worst part? A part of me wants him to look. I haven't told anyone that. Not a soul. But I feel it in my chest, in my stomach, in the way my breath catches when he walks into the room. I tell myself I'm just lonely. That this is what happens when you go too long without being seen, touched, wanted. But then I ask myself, why him? Why Eli? And I don't have an answer I'm proud of. All I know is this: something shifted the day he saw me. Something cracked open. And ever since, I haven't been able to close it. It was raining that day. One of those thick, heavy storms that makes the whole world feel smaller. The kind of rain that hushes everything else, muffling the sounds of life outside the windows. David was out of town, again. Some conference or client dinner, I can't even remember now. He barely said goodbye when he left that morning, just a peck on the cheek, a rushed, "Take care," as he grabbed his laptop bag and disappeared through the front door. I didn't expect anyone else home. Eli usually went out with friends on Saturdays or holed up in his room with his headphones on, lost in his own world. The house was quiet, still, and I felt hollow. I had done the laundry, tidied up the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine a little earlier than I should have. And then I just stood there, staring out the window, watching the rain slide down the glass in slow, lazy streaks. The ache inside me wasn't sharp. It was dull. A slow, creeping emptiness. Like something I couldn't name was missing, and had been missing for a long, long time. I went upstairs. Not for any particular reason. I just needed space. Needed to feel something. I closed the bedroom door behind me, or thought I did. I remember the soft click, but maybe it didn't latch. Maybe I was careless. Or maybe I wanted to believe I was alone so badly, I ignored what I knew deep down. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. Just breathing. Staring at the floor. My fingers moved without thinking. My mind wandered. I didn't light candles. I didn't put on music. It wasn't some grand fantasy or sultry escape. It was raw. Quiet. Desperate. I let my hands trace over my skin like they hadn't in years. Not out of lust, but out of longing. Out of a need to remember that I could still feel. That I hadn't disappeared entirely. For a few brief moments, I let go. I let myself imagine something warmer. Eyes that saw me. Fingers that didn't rush. A presence that didn't feel like an afterthought. And then, I felt it. That presence. Not imagined. Real. I turned my head slowly, breath caught in my throat, and there he was. Eli. Frozen in the doorway. He didn't flinch. Didn't look away. And God. I didn't cover myself fast enough. I was too stunned. Too paralyzed. It felt like an entire lifetime passed in those 3 seconds. His eyes were wide, but not shocked. Not horrified. They held something else. Something I still don't have words for. I sat up, heart pounding in my ears, mouth dry, throat tight. But before I could say a word, he turned. And walked away. Not fast. Not in a panic. Just turned and left. No slam of the door. No footsteps pounding down the hall. Just that thick silence settling in again. Like the storm outside had crept into the walls of the house. I stayed frozen for what felt like forever. My hands still in my lap. My breath shallow. My mind racing, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. That it didn't happen. That maybe the door had been closed and locked, and this was some twisted daydream. But it had happened. He saw me. He watched me. And then he walked away. No apology. No words. But I saw it. I saw the way his chest rose and fell. The way his fingers curled slightly as he turned. The way he hesitated, just a moment before leaving. That moment wasn't accidental. And that silence that followed? It was louder than anything I've ever heard. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face in the doorway. Still. Quiet. Watching. My skin burned with shame, but beneath the shame was something I wasn't ready to name. Something that curled in my chest like a secret. A dangerous one. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table trying to pretend everything was fine. Normal. Just another Sunday. But it wasn't. I couldn't stop thinking about it. About him. Did I forget to lock the door? Or did I leave it open? That question chased me like a shadow. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, an honest slip. I'd been alone in that house so many times. Why would that day be any different? But the truth is, I hadn't checked the lock. I hadn't thought to. And the more I sat with that, the more it gnawed at me. I avoided him for days. Every time I heard his footsteps, I'd duck into another room or pretend to be busy. I couldn't look at him without my heart racing, without my stomach twisting in knots. I was scared of what he thought, of what he felt, of what I might feel if I let myself face it. But Eli, he didn't avoid me. In fact, he started showing up more. Sitting at the counter while I cooked. Asking if I needed help folding laundry. Little things. Nothing direct. Nothing inappropriate. But enough to keep me on edge. And that look in his eyes? It hadn't gone away. It was subtle. Soft. But it was there. There were moments, quiet, blink-and-you'll-miss-it moments, where I caught him watching me. Not like before. Not like the doorway. But closely. Attentively. Like he was trying to read something on my face I hadn't written yet. I told myself he was just young. Confused. Maybe he didn't even understand what he saw. Maybe it was all a misunderstanding. But I was lying. To myself. Because late at night, when the house was quiet and David was asleep next to me with his back turned like he always was, my thoughts went to Eli. Not just the memory of that moment, but the feeling it stirred. I started dreaming about him. Not every night. But often enough that I'd wake up breathless, cheeks flushed, thighs pressed together like I was trying to trap the heat before it slipped away. Dreams where his hands found mine. Dreams where the silence between us broke wide open into something, unspoken but understood. I hated myself for it. And yet, I didn't stop it. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, torn between guilt and longing. Between the life I had and the fantasy that kept creeping in, uninvited but never unwelcome. I started wearing different clothes around the house. Not anything dramatic. Just softer fabrics. A little more skin. A dress with thinner straps. A button undone that didn't need to be. I told myself it was just for me. That I wanted to feel good again. That it had nothing to do with him. But I knew. I knew the way I lingered a little longer in the kitchen when he came in. The way I laughed more easily when he made a joke. The way I waited, hoped for our paths to cross. I hated that I noticed the way his voice had changed. The way his jawline had sharpened. The way his presence filled a room differently now. I was supposed to be the adult. The parent figure. The safe one. But nothing felt safe anymore. My body betrayed me. My mind betrayed me. I kept telling myself that nothing had happened. That I'd done nothing wrong. But that wasn't true. Because something had happened. Something real. Something I couldn't undo. And the more I tried to ignore it, the louder it got inside me. This wasn't just about being seen. It was about being wanted. And I hadn't felt that in so long, I'd forgotten how powerful it was. How dangerous. I'd like to say I found clarity in that time. That I made a choice. That I decided to pull back, draw a line, remind myself of what was right. But I didn't. I drifted through those days in a fog. Half afraid he'd bring it up, half afraid he wouldn't. And all the while, that moment in the doorway looped over and over in my head. His eyes, my breath, the silence, and the part of me, small but alive, that didn't regret it. It started with small things. He offered to help more around the house. Innocent enough, at first. Washing dishes, setting the table, chopping vegetables next to me in the kitchen. But there was something different now in the way he moved, the way he stood a little closer than before. Not obvious. Not inappropriate. Just close. Too close. I could feel the heat of him beside me. Could hear the way his breath caught when our arms touched by accident. Or maybe it wasn't an accident. Maybe nothing was anymore. One evening, as I reached across him for the salt, our hands brushed. Just a touch. Skin on skin. But it was like time stopped. We both froze. Not speaking, not breathing. Just staring at each other. I should have laughed it off. Should have stepped away, created distance. But I didn't. I looked at him. And he looked back. Not like a boy. Not like a son. But like a man. Hungry, curious, and waiting. We said nothing. But in that silence, something passed between us. Something wordless. Something that shook me. Later that week, I was gathering laundry. I went into his room, just for a moment. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just grabbing his clothes like I'd done 100 times before. But something caught my eye. His sketchbook. It was lying open on his desk, pages flipped up like the wind, or maybe his hands had left it that way. I don't know why I looked. Maybe I already knew. But there I was, staring down at a pencil drawing. Of me. It wasn't crude or childish. It was soft. Detailed. Beautiful, even. My face tilted in thought. Hair tucked behind one ear. The way I sometimes look when I'm reading in the living room and forget the world is there. He'd captured me. Not as a mother. Not as a step-anything. But as a woman. And my stomach twisted. When he came home that evening, I confronted him. I tried to keep my voice even, calm. Asked him what it was. Why he'd drawn it. He didn't deny it. He didn't look ashamed. He looked scared. But not because he was caught, because of what it meant. Because I had seen what he'd tried to keep hidden. I didn't mean anything by it, he said quickly, voice trembling. I was sketching. That's all. But I saw the flush in his cheeks. The way he wouldn't meet my eyes. The way his fingers tightened into fists at his sides. He left the room before I could say anything more. And I stood there, alone, holding the weight of that sketchbook like it might burn a hole through my hands. That night, I couldn't sleep. Again. I lay in the dark, eyes open, heart pounding, mind racing. Every part of me alive and raw in ways I didn't know how to name anymore. Then came the knock. Soft. Hesitant. I knew it was him. I don't know what possessed me to open the door. Maybe I wanted to tell him to stop. Maybe I wanted to ask why. Maybe I just wanted to see his face and remind myself that this was real. He stepped inside. He didn't get too close. He stood by the door, hands in his pockets, eyes on the floor. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I shouldn't have drawn you. I shouldn't have. He stopped. I waited. Then he looked at me. And what he said next, I'll never forget it. I didn't mean to, but I can't forget what I saw. His voice was barely above a whisper, like it hurt to say it out loud. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to cry and yell and tell him to leave, to forget, to erase it all. But instead, I stayed. I stood there, in my nightgown, in the quiet, looking into the eyes of someone who had seen me more clearly than anyone had in years. And I didn't move. Not forward. Not away. Just stayed. Because something in me had already crossed a line. Even if nothing had happened yet, something had changed. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The rain had been coming down since early evening. One of those restless storms that never settles. The kind that taps against the windows like it's trying to get in, like it knows something's about to happen. David was gone again. Another late flight. Another business trip. I didn't ask where. I didn't care anymore. I just nodded, kissed his cheek, and watched the door close behind him. I stayed downstairs that night. The house was quiet, but not peaceful. It felt like the air was holding its breath. I was standing at the kitchen sink, staring into nothing, hands wrapped around a warm mug I wasn't even drinking from. The only sound was the rain. Then I heard him. Eli. I didn't turn at first. I knew it was him. I knew the sound of his footsteps, so careful, like he never wanted to disturb the world around him. He stepped into the room and stopped. I could feel his presence behind me. Silence. I waited. Then, softly, he said, I think I should move out. My heart dropped. Just like that. No build-up. No warning. Just those 6 words. I turned around, finally, and looked at him. His eyes were serious. Tired. There was something heavy in them, like he'd been carrying the weight of everything he hadn't said. I can't stay here, he whispered. It's not right. I stepped forward, slowly, not thinking, just feeling. Please don't, I said, my voice shaking. Don't leave. He looked at me like he didn't understand. Or maybe he did, and that's what scared him. We stood there, barely a breath apart. The storm outside growing louder, wilder, like it was echoing what was happening inside me. Then I did something I didn't plan. I reached for him. I touched his arm. Just gently. And he stepped into me. We hugged. But it wasn't just a hug. It was something else. It lasted too long. Our bodies fit too easily. My face pressed against his chest, and I could feel the way his heart raced. I knew I should pull away. I knew it. But I didn't. And when I finally tried, when I shifted to step back, he didn't let go. His hands stayed on my waist. Mine stayed on his chest. And our faces were suddenly, somehow, just inches apart. He looked at me. And I looked at him. Neither of us moved. Neither of us needed to. Because in that suspended second, the line we weren't supposed to cross had already blurred into nothing. Maybe it was just a kiss. Soft. Breathless. A whisper of one. Maybe it was more. I'm not going to say. Not because I'm protecting him, or myself, but because I'm not sure I can explain it. Not with words. Not with rules. Not with labels. All I know is what I felt. And what I felt was alive. In that moment, nothing else existed. Not guilt. Not marriage. Not right or wrong or what the world would say if they knew. Just heat. Silence. And us. We didn't speak after. We didn't need to. He left the kitchen without a word. And I stayed, standing there in the dark, heart-pounding, skin-tingling, mind a mess. Something had happened. Something real. And there was no undoing it. After that night, the silence came back. But it wasn't the same as before. It was thicker now. Sharper. Like glass between us, see-through but dangerous to touch. Eli and I stopped speaking. We didn't have to say it out loud. We both knew we'd crossed something we couldn't uncross. Whatever boundary we pretended existed had vanished the moment we didn't step away. He started avoiding me. Didn't come to the kitchen when I cooked. Didn't sit at the table when dinner was ready. Some nights he skipped meals altogether. I'd hear the door to his room shut, quiet and final. And me? I became a ghost in my own home. I moved through the rooms like I was walking underwater, slower, heavier, unsure if I was floating or drowning. I forgot to answer emails. Burned toast more than once. Left laundry in the machine until it smelled of mildew. My hands were busy, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. David came home a few days later. The moment he stepped in, I could feel his eyes on me. Studying me. Not in the way a husband studies his wife out of affection, but in that distant way you look at a picture you know is crooked, but can't quite figure out why. He hugged me like always. Light, perfunctory, absent. But something in his expression lingered. A hesitation. A question he hadn't figured out how to ask. I told him I was just tired. Long week. Didn't feel like myself. And that part was true. I didn't feel like myself. Because I wasn't. I was something else now. Something split down the middle. Something I didn't recognize. One evening, I was upstairs folding towels when I heard David call my name from Eli's room. My heart stopped. I walked in, keeping my breath steady, forcing calm into my voice. He held up the sketchbook. That sketchbook. The one I should have hidden, destroyed, anything. He flipped it open, held the page up. My face. His shading. His detail. Every stroke familiar. Did Eli draw this? He asked, a little confused, but not yet suspicious. My mouth opened before I even thought. No, I said. It's mine. He blinked. You. Yeah. I used to sketch. Just felt like trying again. The lie came out smooth. Easy. Too easy. He stared at the page again. Nodded slowly. It's really good, he said. Didn't know you had that kind of talent. I smiled. Small. Hollow. He left the room, still holding the book, flipping through the pages. And I stood there, heart hammering against my ribs, the walls around me closing in. I looked into my husband's eyes, and I lied. Just like that. Clean. Straight-faced. Without a tremble. And that was the moment it hit me. Not what I'd done with Eli. Not what I'd allowed. Not even the fact that I couldn't stop thinking about it. But this. The lie. The ease of it. For the first time. I realized I'd become someone I never wanted to be. Some nights, I lie awake staring at the ceiling, and I ask myself the same question over and over again. What have I done? And the truth is, I still don't know how to answer it. Because, yes, I miss that moment with Eli. God help me, I miss it. The electricity of it. The way the world fell away. The way, just for a second, I felt seen, truly, completely seen. It wasn't just about the physical. It was something deeper, something I hadn't felt in years. A sense of being alive in my own skin again. Of being more than a wife, more than a placeholder in someone else's routine. But at the same time, I feel sick when I think about it. Not just guilt. Something heavier. A weight that sits in my stomach and won't move. Like I've betrayed something sacred, not just my marriage, but my own sense of self. My own values. The woman I thought I was. The woman I used to be would have walked away. She would have drawn a clear line. She would have never entertained that moment, never leaned in, never lingered in the silence, never stayed. But that woman feels like a stranger now. And what scares me most is that I don't even know when she left. Sometimes I wonder if my marriage ever really fulfilled me. Or if I just convinced myself it did because it was easier than being alone. David was safe. He offered stability, structure. A house, a name. But not warmth. Not presence. Not passion. That faded so early, and I pretended I didn't notice. But I did. I noticed every birthday he forgot. Every night he stayed late. Every time I reached out, and he turned over in bed without touching me. So when Eli looked at me like I mattered, like I was a woman worth noticing, it cracked something open. And once that happened, there was no sealing it back shut. Eli left the house a few days after David found the sketch. Said he was staying with friends for a while, that he needed space. He didn't say much. Didn't look me in the eye when he packed his bag. I didn't try to stop him. I couldn't. There was too much unsaid between us. Too many stolen glances, half-buried thoughts, moments that we both wanted to believe didn't mean what they meant. After he left, the house felt even quieter than before. But not the peaceful kind of quiet. The kind that rings in your ears, like punishment. Like it's reminding you of everything you've lost and everything you never had. David asked if something was wrong. I told him I felt off. That I needed space. Time. A little distance from everything. I used vague words, soft ones, nothing that would set off alarms. Just enough to explain the way I'd been drifting, even if I didn't really know where I was drifting to. He nodded. He always nods. He didn't fight me on it. And that might have hurt most of all. No anger. No suspicion. Just detachment. Like he expected it. Like maybe part of him had been waiting for me to admit that something inside me had changed. And it has. I've changed. But I don't know.